Hi, everybody. This is Shawna Suckow, and I am so excited this morning to share with you all. One of my mentors, Jill Konrath, has taken time to be with us today. Jill is a sales expert. She's a speaker. She's the author of 3 best-selling books, Selling to Big Companies. My favorite, Snap Selling, which again, Jill, I just recommended to an audience yesterday. It's my favorite selling book. And Agile Selling. She has a new book coming out soon called More Sales, Less Time, Surprisingly Simple Strategies for Today's Crazy Busy Sellers. I cannot wait to read that one. She has over 250,000 LinkedIn followers and nearly 150,000 blog readers, making her one of the most impactful sales experts in the universe. I love that. Thank you for being here. I so appreciate that you took the time today to share some advice on what's going on out there, because it's a crazy time in sales.
It's a crazy time, and we need to be out there talking to people about the changes that have to be made in order to continue being successful today. I mean, it's just crucial that people have leadership that shows them where it's going.
Yes. Well, let's start out right away with that, with where it's going, and how do you see selling evolving since the recession, and give us an overview, a 30,000-foot overview of what's going on right now, because it's crazy, as we said.
Yeah, the recession. So we'll spin back 8 years, just that time. What have I seen? With the recession, companies got lean and mean, and everybody was doing way more work than they typically had to do. Then they weren't hiring any new people. Deadlines were kept the same, but people were expected to achieve the same goals with fewer resources in the same amount of time. And it became a real issue about protecting time at that, for the buyers at that time, because they were overwhelmed. And by the way, they were also extremely risk averse at that time. Mm-hmm. Scared they'd lose their job if they made the wrong decision. So suddenly, where maybe only 2 or 3 people were involved in the decision process, suddenly you have 5 or 6 or 20 as they tried to spread the potential blame among a huge group of people. So those are some of the things that I saw that changed. And the reality is it didn't go back. It just kept going. And so the recession spurred the change, but when it was over, it stayed that way.
Right. And now, things are kind of the new normal. And I see deadlines shortening. Resources haven't returned to the sales teams, but buyers are expecting everything immediately. We live in this era of immediacy, and it's putting even more pressure on the sales team.
Yes. And what's funny, let me just say what I think is really funny about that, Shawna, is that this immediacy, they want it now, but if there's something that they have to do in order to enable you to do your job as a salesperson, for example, if they have to give you some information that you then incorporate, they don't give it to you till the very last minute because they're so busy. But somehow they expect you to miraculously turn it around overnight.
Pull it out of your hat. And then they say, buyers typically say, we'll give you an answer on Tuesday, but Tuesday doesn't come. They don't say Tuesday of what month, what year, and so they jump through all these hoops, and then it's a waiting game. Do you have any advice for sellers to get buyers to move on their decisions?
Wow, I mean that's a huge question, and it really depends on
question.
It's a $1 million question. It certainly isn't. Let me just say, I think it goes back, and you have to look at movement throughout the decision cycle. You can't just look at movement towards the end when they're going to give you the decision, because what you have done previously may or may not impact movement. For example, if you don't have a strong reason why they should be changing from the status quo. I mean, if they don't believe in their heart of hearts that changing is really that big a deal, then they're just going to dawdle along and, that sounds really nice. And we might like to go to that. And when we decide to change, I will surely recommend you. But there's no commitment to change. There's none of that. So much of it is just like they're patting you on the head saying, thanks so much for doing a nice job. We'll get back to you, but that's your fault. I mean, that literally as a salesperson, that's your fault, because it's literally, you have not done your job to make change the next logical thing. You have not involved or engaged the buyers. I mean, I talked about this decision team. If you have 6 or 7 people involved in the decision, it's really complicated for your buyer. And so if you allow them to maneuver it by themselves, they often get overwhelmed. And this is, again, because we're dealing with crazy busy people. And when somebody is overwhelmed, they just throw up their hands and go, I can't deal with it right now. Right. And so what we have to do is we have to simplify the decision for them, take out some of the overwhelm, give them a good valid reason to change, and then keep moving and progressing. But it's not sufficient to just say, they didn't call, they're going to call me on Tuesday, and then they didn't call. How can I speed that up? You have to look at the entire buying process.
Now, what do you say to salespeople that have a hard time figuring out who these 20 decision makers are, because that buyer is really protective, maybe out of fear for their job, or they want to maybe seem in charge when they're really not? How can the salesperson really get to who the decision makers are?
Well, first of all, I would certainly say we can go to the great Rolodex in the sky called LinkedIn. Yep. And check LinkedIn to find out who else is connected to this person, or to search for positional titles that we typically work with. And so if we're involved in a decision that might involve marketing, and it might involve sales, and it might involve HR, there are certain positions that our company typically works with. And if we're smart, we might know that. If we would sit down and study our existing decisions, we would find who are the primary roles. What are the primary roles that we're dealing with? So once you know who the primary roles are, then you can go to, like I said, to LinkedIn and start identifying who these people might be. But the other thing that I think people have to do in order to circumvent this one person who is kind of holding you hostage? Is hostage? Yes. I'll call you. No, I don't want you going around. Is to literally own the decision process. And when they're speaking to that person from almost the very first meeting, or maybe the second or third, they can say, Shawna, based on my experience on decisions like this, we typically have to get the director of corporate communications involved, the head of your demand gen in the organization, and we have to get the VP of sales involved, because all of them are crucial to the decision process. Mm-hmm. If we don't get them involved from the get-go, we're going to slow everything down, and we're going to make it much more difficult to have change. So our process, the way we work with clients, is we get them engaged fairly quickly so we can see what we need to consider in the decision. And by the way, you're the one who's interested in making this change. This will help you get the buy-in you need to do this.
Brilliant. Position it for the buyer to benefit. I love that.
It's all about them. You're trying to do this change. Leading an initiative like this is tough. You haven't done it very often. So based on our experience, here's what we need to do.
That's brilliant. I love it. So
simple. It takes it out of having to ask, can I talk to the VP of sales, or would you mind if I go around you to meet with the demand gen person? No, it's our process. It's how we work with clients, because we are experts in this, and we know that that's what it takes.
Right.
It actually gives you enhanced credibility when you do it that way.
And you have more ownership of the process then, and you're not at the mercy of the buyer.
Yes, exactly.
As much. Okay, so let's talk about the future of selling when, we're starting to see rumblings of email going away, or certainly becoming a lot more difficult with things like SaneBox and Enroll Me. The buyers are controlling their email a lot more, and the phone, people don't answer the phone as much as they used to. So what does the future of selling look like in your eyes?
Well, it involves more than just selling, let me say. First of all, I think it very much needs to be a corporate decision that marketing and sales have to be aligned, and that marketing, they need to be targeting the customer and be very cognizant of who they're going after, and very, very focused. And then they need to create the content that would attract these people. You mentioned SaneBox. I recently got Unroll.me, which is similar to SaneBox, which anything that has that it comes with an unsubscribe at the bottom, it goes into Unroll.me, and then I have the ability to, with one little click, get rid of everything that I don't want.
It's beautiful.
Since I've been using it's wonderful, and I use SaneBox too. But since I've been using Unroll.me, I have unsubscribed from over 1,000 newsletters in less than a year. Some of these are ones that I signed up for.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are ones from, organizations I do business with that need to keep in touch with me. Some of them are work related. Some are interesting things that I want to read that I no longer find helpful. Like I downloaded an ebook that somebody, that interested me, but I don't want to stay in touch with that company. So we are totally inundated with emails. Yep. And everybody is, which means we have to think about email fundamentally different as a seller. What are we going to do to be able to, first of all, stand out? And if you're sending out email blasts these days, trying to go after all these people at once to save you time and to make you more productive, you are going to end up in the file, that I'm talking about, the dump for the emails. So you have to write personalized emails today. I mean, you literally have to write personalized messages, short, really concise, short paragraphs, less than 100 words, relevant to the buyer, with not about product stuff, but about something that they're interested in.
Yes.
Something that might connect you with those human beings. And they have to feel that it is a message entirely for them. And
I so agree with you. Hyper-personalized sales is, yes, I 100% agree with you. From the buyer perspective, that's the way everything's going. Everybody wants to think it's all about them.
Yes. Well, and I do too. So I totally get where they're coming from, because it is all about me, right. and as a seller, it's all about me too, and so we have to think, if it's really all about me as a seller, I will only be successful if I write an email that they'll open. So now, to protect myself, I need to write an email that is relevant, that is tied to this person's needs, that is interesting to open, that has a good subject line. That is my way to serve myself, right, as well as my customers. It's a marriage. It's a beautiful marriage that we will serve our customer. We will serve ourselves better if we serve our customer.
So we have time for one last question. I love that. It seems like it's more about quality these days than quantity. So what would you say to someone who has an old school boss who says, my least favorite phrase, it's a numbers game?
Yeah. Well, what would I say? I would actually say the same thing I've always said to a boss like that. I mean, first of all, it's not a numbers game, and it has never been a numbers game if you've been selling in the business to business environment. Never, ever, ever. It's always been a quality game. What we have never had is such discerning buyers and such easy ways for them to avoid us. Mm-hmm. So that in itself is what has changed it to a quality game. It is a quality game, not the numbers game. What would I say to a salesperson who works for that type of manager? I know what. I mean, the truth is, I would say you should start looking for another job, because, and that's not what anybody wants to hear, but when you're working with somebody who is dated in their perspective, they do not understand what the role of marketing. They're focusing on metrics that are no longer adequate. They're not upgrading their own skills, meaning that they're lacking in being a learning person. And today you need to be an agile learner in order to be successful. So you're dealing with an old fart who's doing things the same old way and isn't growing and exploring new things, and you want to know how you can succeed. I mean, it's going to be damn hard to succeed because you don't have the foundation to succeed. So at that point, I would say open yourself to something else. And by the way, I have an ebook on my website on how to avoid the nightmare sales job. And it's a free ebook that people can download. And it's all about what you should look for to ensure you don't get into that kind of situation again.
Fantastic. I will put your website as well as the name of your upcoming book down below, which is More Sales, Less Time, Surprisingly Simple Strategies for Today's Crazy Busy Sellers. And Jill, I know how busy you are, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. You're fantastic.
Thank you. It's been great fun. Thanks for asking me, Shawna.
Thanks.